Statistics Canada says the amount Canadians owe relative to their income ticked higher in the first quarter as debt grew faster than income. The agency says the ratio of household credit marked debt to disposable income rose to 173.9% on a seasonally adjusted basis, up from 173.5% in the fourth quarter of 2024. Earlier, I was joined by economist Dr. Moshe to unpack the Statistics Canada report and what this will pose to the broader economy.
So if we're going to look at debt to income, it can rise for a variety of reasons. The simplest one is that the numerator, the debt bit, is rising faster than the income bit, the denominator. So that's not surprising. If people are borrowing money right now, the rate at which they're borrowing exceeds the rate at which they're getting wage increases. So of course, this thing is going to rise even if you manage to balance your budget on an annual basis. You're still going to find that that debt to income ratio is going to increase. It's no different for individuals than it is for the government. I think the issue, beyond just that it's rising, is what is the debt being used for? So let's take two identical people with identical circumstances, and one of them borrows money to finance a blowout weekend in Vegas for them and their friends. And the other person borrows the money to do home improvements or to improve their skills, getting further education or go for some job training. They might both have the same debt to income ratio, but one is clearly more dangerous than the other. And don't tell me that it's the person that borrowed for their home. The one who's borrowing for Vegas is in real trouble here because they don't have anything residual that they have to show for that trip other than maybe an unintended tattoo. So it's the same sort of thing then that when we're looking at households in the aggregate, it's not really enough to just say, yeah, it's rising. Why is it rising? So if it's rising because people are borrowing money just to make ends meet, that's the equivalent of the Vegas story. If they're borrowing money because they realize that the AI revolution is coming and their jobs might be in danger, and so they're racing to get their skills upgraded so that they don't get automated out of existence, that's actually not bad debt. So I think there's a little more nuance needed here than just looking at the headline number.
Dr. Lander also unpacked how big of a factor housing is on the total debt loads for Canadians.
It's a substantial part. Most people's debt is student loans, car loans, lines of credit, and mortgages. And so mortgages probably swamp everything, especially these days where housing is so disproportionately expensive relative to income. So it's likely that I think that there was almost like this implicit Ponzi scheme that all of us were playing, which is we didn't mind borrowing a huge amount of money on the knowledge that either one, our incomes would rise quickly, and or two, our housing values would rise quickly, so that even if we had to sell the home at a later point, we'd have more than enough money, pocket a little bit of equity, and then just start the game all over again. What we're finding now is that in some of the larger cities, housing prices have flattened or maybe even falling, and certainly income has not been rising quickly for many for over a decade now. And so where the Conservatives tried to blame that on the Trudeau Liberal government, it really wasn't Trudeau Liberals that were to blame for it. It's something that's been happening in Canada since well before Trudeau came to power. I think those two things then have conspired to create the situation where housing is taking up an increasingly larger portion of that debt, in part because when we go to the bank and the bank says you qualify for this amount of mortgage, we don't push back and say, thank you, but I don't need it. We just say, oh, I qualify for that, so I guess I better take it. And then, of course, we realize that maybe it is a little bit beyond our means, and then we get stuck.